I'm here with my good friend, my old friend Susan Hellauer. Susan is a distinguished musicologist and a distinguished performer, a founding member of the vocal group Anonymous 4 that has opened the ears of America and the world to a vast array of medieval music, early American music, and quite a lot of other music that we didn't know. She's one of the rare people with the gift of combining scholarship with performance in a way that enhances both, and I'm really glad to have this chance to chat with her. Hi, Susan. Nice to see you.
Hi, good to see you too.
Tell us a little bit about how you got started in music and how you went over to the dark medieval side, if you can remember.
Well, yes, it's just still within my grasp, so I'll get it out while I still have it. Yes, I really fell in love with music in high school, in the high school band. I was a trumpet player, and I think there was something at that time in the 1960s really special about women playing brass. We had a lot of female tuba players, believe sousaphone players, but not so much in the trumpet section. And I started on French horn, but the boys were a lot cuter in the trumpet section. So I asked if I could switch. So I did. Then I went on to college, Queens College, as a trumpet major, actually, and enjoyed it very much. My specialty was contemporary music, anything that had just been written the other day. That's what I played. That was my niche. But then I got Bell's palsy in my senior year, and I couldn't play at all. But
That's the thing that paralyzes part of your face for a period of time, right? Yeah.
it was very bad and shocking. Actually, I would have jumped out the window, but I lived in the basement apartment. No, I'm only kidding. But I was distraught. I was absolutely distraught. That was my identity, was as a trumpet player. But at Queens College, where I was, City University of New York, you had to be in an ensemble no matter what. So they stuck me in the vocal ensemble, which with Paul Maynard, who was one of the directors of the Pro Musica, the second director after Noah Greenberg, and he specialized in early music, and he loved contemporary music as well. So I was singing music that I'd only heard maybe once or twice in music history class, and something just struck me. I could barely sing, but I immediately was transfixed. I'm sure it was Dufay that year, and then the next year was Machaut, and it was a, a variety of medieval and early Renaissance music, which is or contemporary music, and the medieval and early Renaissance just transfixed me. And he said, "You're a trumpet player, right?" I said, "Well, when you're feeling better, try the cornetto." So then I mainly became an early brass player for a few years. I focused very strongly on the cornetto and the alto sackbut. And then, but the Bell's palsy never resolved to a point where I could really play the way I wanted to. And so I converted to singing in ensembles like Richard Cheruskin's Capella Nova in the late 1970s, and then Alex Blatchley's Pomerium, and then started to do a little more solo singing with a trio that was we formed for entertainment around around the year 1979, 1980. So that it's kind of happened gradually, but it was, when one door closes, the bathroom window opens, you try something else. And it was really the repertoire, was not singing per se, but it was the repertoire that engaged me. And singing really was my only real way to get at it. And so I took lessons, and I tried to become a better singer. And then I went to uh, get a master's degree from Queens College in music history, and then almost a PhD in medieval music history from Columbia. And even though I didn't finish my PhD, I got to work with Ernest Sanders, being his teaching assistant, transcribing very early polyphony, insisting that we sing it in class. Everybody hated me because I made the other students sing all the examples. It's a pest. What a pest. But those became the early repertoire of Anonymous Four.
Yeah.
Later, which was just an informal gathering to see what it would sound like in female voices, what early polyphony and chant would sound like in just high voices. My colleague Johanna Rose, who I knew from a choir job I had done a weekend, I guess you'd call it a pre-electricity festival. It's like early music, early everything.
Yeah.
And the music director asked the women to do a Compline service and do all the singing, polyphony and chant. And she was just fascinated with the sound. And so we just were fooling around, but then decided we enjoyed not having a conductor. That was very good to have equal responsibility. It was just fooling around in '86. We did a church service in the summer of a variety of music, mostly English chant and 13th century English polyphony from my teaching assistant homework, that I had. And then we decided to put on a Christmas concert in December of '86 at St. Michael's Church, where our choir job was. And then it just, I think 8 people came to the concert.
And you were just the two of you were singing, or were you already
We
4?
actually were 4. It was Johanna asked me, Marcia Janensky, and another chant singer we knew named Susan Jenvik
Right.
to do this. And so it was 4 of us right away. And but the other Susan couldn't stay because we were rehearsing constantly for no money.
She couldn't afford it.
He couldn't afford it. It was just, and I had a full-time job as a software engineer, which I didn't quit till 1994.
Johanna worked with us at Early Music America for a while.
Johanna worked there. Marcia was at Mannes and then Manhattan School She's a librarian. And Susan Jenvik, I think, was mainly a freelancer, and being so tied down to one group just was not going to work.
Yeah.
So it actually worked better for us to have the cohesiveness and rehearse like mad just to develop our sound without having to worry about being a freelancer.
Yeah.
So the fact that I had a job with a 401k and dental insurance, I loved my job, but I love music much more. So it allowed, I could leave there at 2, go to the library, do research, meet up at 5 when Marcia was out of her job, and sing till 8. And, that's what we did for a long time. And every day, at 5 days a week.
And was that with a view of sort of breaking into the big time, or you just really wanted to get together and sing as what you did instead of going out to the bars?
Well,
Well, that too. I don't mean that you couldn't.
no, no.
Well, how did it happen that you went from that to being such a recording phenomenon?
Yeah, people say overnight success. Ha ha ha. We started in '86, and we just loved the sound and the process. So the sound was different from the mixed groups or having men sing chant, all hearing that sound. It was like a scavenger hunt to find repertoire, though not that difficult, because 13th century, well, chant, of course, is unison, so it doesn't matter what group of voices, but early polyphony from the 12th and 13th century and even early 14th century is very overlapping in the voice range. There's that concept of SATB is not until early 15th century at the earliest.
Right, yeah.
And, not really until the Flemish singers started becoming, those big basso voices. So up until well into the 14th century, a lot of that repertoire was perfectly fine to do for an alto, me, and 3 sopranos, one of whom kind of sings in mid-range.
Yeah.
So that alto, mezzo, soprano, soprano worked really well. And 4 is the largest number of voices you would have in that time period as well. So we had it covered. And we just enjoyed the process when somebody brings a piece of music in and you have nobody's the leader, even the person who brings the music in and knows all about what it is, where it came from, what its original provenance, how it would have been used. Even though I might know all that stuff, I'm still not the boss.
Right.
If I think it should be voiced this way, I can be overruled. It's, majority rules. And that was very good for my personal growth as a person.
I suppose it bears some analogies to a string quartet.
Yes, absolutely. If you have the string quartet where nobody's on a higher rank than anybody else. I mean, we worked with string quartets from time to time or ensembles like that. And some of them were democracies and others were absolutely not.
Yeah.
So a lot of it depended on how the group came together and who was funding it, who was spending all their time doing all those little tasks. We divided all our tasks up so that I was the library rat and Marcia and Johanna were getting us performances. And Ruth also did some of that. And when she came to join us, which was very early.
Mm.
And
Ruth
uh,
Cunningham, you mean? Yeah.
yeah, well, Susan Genovic had to leave less than a year, less than
Mm.
about a year. She, it was just too much for her. But then we asked Ruth Cunningham to join us, and it stayed very stable. And but so we divvied up the tasks among us, depending on who could do what better. So Marcia and Johanna would take on the language tasks in terms of pronunciation. I would do all the Latin translation and the transcription or finding the music and putting concerts together. And very, very important for us to be different, but not just to be different and find a niche for its own sake. We did two very important things. So niche finding is very important. And I think it's probably more important now that even than it was then, because our career arced with the compact disc, with the CD. And now that kind of music purchasing is over.
Right.
How you fund your career is a whole different thing. So we did two things very important. First of all, we made sure that our concerts would be to our liking and different from when a conductor puts a concert together and it's like a string of my favorite pieces. So it's like they're going to do a Josquin concert and it's all Josquin masses and motets. And there's no way it would have been heard like that originally. A liturgical um, service in which this would occur would be mostly plain chant.
Right.
And when you couch your polyphony in its native habitat of plain chant,
Then it gets beautiful. Yeah,
the
absolutely.
polyphony sounds like a rocket taking off for the moon. It's just, oh my, wow. You have to. So we were not a religious group, and there's no way we could recreate a 3-hour service. We were just going to try to create some context by making sure that if we're doing medieval music, sacred music, or even secular, we're going to try to get monophonic music in there to a good extent to balance it, to show why polyphony was so amazing. I mean, people actually in the 12th, 13th, 14th century thought that polyphony was like the work of the devil.
Yeah, but also you were demonstrating that there's very beautiful monophonic music that's entirely worth attention, right?
Well, even if you look at Machaut in the 14th century, flourished in the 14th century, who wrote a lot of polyphony, his monophonic,
Yeah.
tons of it in the Trouvère tradition
Yeah.
was considered just as exalted, if not more exalted, than the polyphonic repertoire. Monophonic music, had a special place
Yeah.
as a kind of heightened poetry. So we, the conductors we'd worked with felt like chant was, oh, let's get it out of the way. Gloria in excelsis Deo. Come on, let's get to the good stuff. And we had the opposite feeling. So that kind of textural restraint and context creating was very important part of our niche creating, our identity creation. And another part of our identity creation was that our concerts were going to be held together by a thematic, dramatic, theatrical thread. Of course, liturgy is theater, so you can use liturgy. You can use a story, you can use a saint's life, you can use a source that has something unified about it, um, a legend. So all of this to make sure it's thematically threaded together, not just our favorite pieces. We'll do England on the first half and we'll do Italy on the second half.
Uh-huh.
That was not, and we didn't want to have a first half and second half. We actually asked our audiences not to applaud at all until the end. We loosened up on that later on, but and we used dramatic readings and poetry as well. So we wanted to avoid that thing where after every 2-minute medieval piece, people clap.
Right, and the clapping is longer than the music. Right. Yeah.
The music, and it breaks the spell. We wanted to push people back and keep them there. So our kind of concert, maybe an hour and a half, hour 20, hour and a half, no intermission, usually sometimes no applause, and a single unified thematic story was a very important part of our niche identity. And actually, there's one more thing, which is we very much avoided any music that could be woman identified from the beginning
Hmm.
because we didn't want to be put into paint ourselves into a corner. Oh, yes, there are women who do women's music. And then after you've exhausted Hildegard and the Las Huelgas Codex and maybe Stary Sans from Poland and a couple of other hypothetical things, you're done. Then you have to start having people write music for you. So we deliberately avoided we didn't do Las Huelgas, we didn't do Hildegard until I think 1996, it's like 10 years, 9 or 10 years. And also it's really hard. And we had to get our sound, you know, blended and melded together really well. So I think identity creation was not done with an eye toward being famous. Believe me, we did not think anyone was, but maybe we'd get a nice little New York following. And maybe have a dozen concerts at early music series and festivals. That was really as far as we thought we'd ever go. But we did know that we wanted to do this ourselves without any outside help. And
So
we,
it was concerts that got you started, and then I'm sure it's the recordings that sort of got your name out everywhere. How did the transition from the one to the other happen?
right. So we gradually did more and more concerts, starting in 87, maybe a few a year. And then the, the Rose and Janensky booking agency just got the lists from the EMA office like everybody else did. We didn't steal anything. We just did what other members of the organization did. And they made cold calls to early music series and festivals. And we'd maybe get a couple here or there. And I think one of our first ones was in Folly Beach, the Little Spoleto Festival. We managed, but we only got that because we were all in Pomerium and they were there. So they didn't have to pay an extra airfare for us. We could just sort of, ride on the back of that. And so then in 1989, we got invited to the Regensburg Early Music Festival, Taga Alta Musik, which takes place near my Hellauer ancestral homeland of Passau. And so I was really eager to go there. And we did English Lady Mass there, which we had just developed. It was not our first program. It was maybe our third or fourth program. And all the groups on that festival that year just happened to be from America. I think all but one.
Huh.
And we all went to each other's concerts, and several of them just said, "Do you guys have a recording contract?" And we said, "A recording contract? Us?" and and they said, "Immediately." And they give us some advice about different recording companies. So we went back and we made a little demo cassette. I still have it. It's an artifact. And we recorded it in some church basement somewhere in Manhattan. And then Marcia was in charge of this, and she sent it around to various places. We got nibbles, which we were surprised, and we talked to, I think, 3 different companies. But Harmonia Mundi was the most serious. They seemed to be the most willing to let us just do what we wanted. The others said, "Well, you should do a Hildegard recording first, of course, and then you should do less well, and we'll pair you with these instrumentalists." Or, there was a catch. With Harmonia Mundi, they said, "Well, we'd like you to do this program," and that's really, they took us out. 2 groups took us out for sushi at expensive restaurants, which is really nice. And Harmonia Mundi, really, they just seemed like they wanted to know what we wanted to do. And the compact disc was just starting to take off in 1990. And so we signed the contract in 90, late 90, went into the recording studio in 91, and it came out in 92, English Lady Mass.
Yeah.
Might be off by 1 year, but it was right around then. So it was the cassette just landed on Robina Young's desk at Harmonia Mundi, the artistic director and vice president. And, cast your bread upon the waters.
Well, Robina had very good taste, and she was right in that case. English Lady Mass really took off, didn't it? It was a wildly popular CD,
Yes,
as I remember.
it did. And I remember, getting fax. I think we had fax then, but getting, phone calls and faxes about where it is on the charts starting in February of 92. It was released in 91, right? It was released fall release. They always did fall releases, so September. So released in fall 91. And then early 92, they started watching the Billboard charts. And they said, we see something here. We're going to make some posters and start to hype this a little at record store. Remember record stores?
I'm,
So, and yeah, it started climbing. And then we had a management that was they didn't have a lot of reach. And once the recording really climbed up, we switched to Herbert Barrett management, which had more mainstream classical acts. They they were able to get us a lot of concerts, and they did. We did a lot of. Started in 93, because 92 was when the record was climbing, and then it takes a year to book. So 93, it started really getting a lot more. And I didn't quit my day job
yeah.
until June of 94, just before we had a big European tour. So, but I was working part-time. I was, I could work on a laptop, which was the size of a pizza box and weighed like 6 bricks. But I could take that with me, on the road. I worked in the telecom software industry.
Hmm.
And I could work on the road, and with that modem, the 2K modem, I, I did that for a while. And then I finally, when I quit, I pinched myself. I said, I can't believe this is happening.
Well, and that was a time when people tried to get concerts in order to get a recording contract, right? Nowadays, people seem to want to do some recording or something in order to be able to get concerts. I'm not sure that the recording plays the same role for a emerging professional as it once did.
We were told that we couldn't get a really first-rate booking agency to help us until we had a recording,
Mm,
a published, like from a recording company,
yeah,
real recording company recording. And without that, they're just not going to be able to book us seriously. So it was the same then.
yeah,
Yeah. No, it was that to make that step up, we needed to have that recording and we needed to say, oh, and people are buying it,
yeah.
you know.
Well, I mean, you were good, and it was great, and there's no wonder everybody bought it, and it was so popular. I wonder how many people there are who work very, very hard and don't get the recording contract and sort of struggle along for a long time. You all were a real kind of success story in a way. Let me ask you this, Susan. Do you think this is not something you're supposed to be an expert about, but do you think that the technical qualities required to sing medieval and early Renaissance music are different from those that real singers use?
Yeah,
You'll forgive me.
it is an issue. I think that the four of us in Anonymous Four all naturally had less vibrato, and had, like, Marsha's a folk singer. My voice was much more like a pop singer. I did not have any kind of big voice. I think I subbed in my late husband's synagogue choir once, and I couldn't hear myself at all. It was an emergency. The alto was suddenly sick, and I said, "Well, I can sing all the notes, but the soprano, tenor, and bass were, making the bricks vibrate. There's no way I can be heard in a large space, but not that way." So, um, and I think, and Ruth has more projection, but a very pure voice, almost like a boy, with some vibrato, but not a lot. So I think that we had that um, gift where we all have four people with very different sounding voices. We don't sound alike at all, but we're
But you
able.
cultivated a sound that went together in the most amazing way.
That's from doing music. That's from phrasing. That occasionally a vowel sound. But I think that if any four singers who really want to blend and who are willing to spend the time to do phrase shapes. Where's the arc of that phrase? Where does it come back? Where is this an upbeat, or is this, that kind of detail work, fine detail work, which can drive you completely bananas. If you all agree on how the phrase goes, what it means, where it's going, where it's travel, is that a traveling note? Is that a coming back note? A lot of our own terminology, our own language. But that work is what made us blend. Nobody was forcing their voice to do anything, but we all had more like pop folk voices, although, Johanna and Ruth would be completely comfortable in a church choir.
Yeah, yeah.
you know but if you're an opera singer who's, going to do this, from here, that, and you're not, one of your main things to do is not blending with other people, even in the um the what's that end of the act, that one, the next to the last act in Rigoletto, I think, where they're all, no,
The big quartet, the Bella figlia
that's that,
dell'amore.
you know, it's together, but it's four different stories. So you're not really blending. And, or, a lot of the Mozart's operas have them all over the place. But in what we're doing, it's four heads, one voice. But if we all sounded alike, we would never have gotten anywhere.
Huh.
So
Partly it's the sound, but I love what you said about the care that you give to the music as music. Because I think a lot of people think that the farther back in time you go, the less finesse, the less delicacy, the less kind of detail the music has. And I think you feel maybe almost the opposite of that.
absolutely the opposite. So when you hear Salem singers singing some chant in the Salem style with that equalist, where every note kind of gets the same length and fullness, you don't have the phrasing that the words would naturally bring to it, there, that gives an impression of chant that's very kind of washed out.
Yeah.
Whereas, well, listening to Ben Bagby or any sequencia recording, the words, it's all the words. And they would perform from word books.
Right.
And, we did that sometimes too, because it's all storytelling. And if your storytelling isn't blended with the music is at the service of the storytelling. And the storytelling has many levels. It has the word level, it has the sentence level, it has the overall arc of the piece. You know, that's all detail work that has to be carved out. And when people hear contemporary monks or nuns singing the Salem style and they get that kind of removed, overly removed impression, it's really, one of the earliest Salem researchers. I always want to say Dom Perignon, but it's
No, Cardine, you might mean.
no, yes, and there's one that started with a T also. But I'm not really an expert
Oh,
in
yeah.
Salem at all. But there was Cardino, and the earlier makers of it did speak about the words. And when you look at
Yeah.
the earliest Salem editions from around 1900, there's no marks, there's no dots, there's no ictus.
Yeah. It's just
Square notes and say something. So that's how we felt. And
great.
that detail work of phrasing, just like in a great string quartet, it's really no different. It's, how much attention is paid and then practice so that you're in tune and that, you can physically carry out the demands of the music, you know, together mean you're going to blend. You're going to become a unit that's greater than the sum of its parts. It's a lot of work.
You
There's no
also,
magic.
over time, spent a lot of time expanding your repertoire. You say you had some sort of pop folk voices in the group. Well, you did some of, I don't say pop music, but you did a lot of early American music and other kinds of things, broadening the repertory in a way, but still using your signature sound.
Right. So actually the first public performance that we ever did that anyone ever gave us money for was contemporary music,
Huh.
incidental music to a play, some Greek play. I can't remember exactly which one, some Greek tragedy. And it was at the Symphony Space in Upper West Side in Manhattan. And I don't remember her name. I had not heard of her after that, but she wrote some really nice music for us. And we were the incidental music in the play. I think Johanna's father was in the play. That's how we got all our early jobs. Somebody had to know somebody.
Right, yeah.
Well, it was only our friends and family who came to our concerts. But so we were happy to do that. And I had a strong background in contemporary music from my trumpet playing days. I mean, that's nothing, wouldn't bother me to play anything. But and very early on, we also got offered Voices of Light, which is an oratorio to a silent film. Um, and Richard Einhorn's the composer. It was a Passion of Joan of Arc, a 1927 silent film by a Belgian, I believe a Belgian director. And it's a fantastic piece of music. But we sing like Anonymous Four.
Right.
It's not atonal or anything. It's tonal. As contemporary music, it's tonal, but he wrote it with us in mind. And he had performed it a few times already with other people. And then he very shyly called up and said, "Would you like to hear something?" And we just jumped at it, absolutely jumped at it. And that was that was 93, 94. So that was early on. So we were always into good music, whatever it is. So we knew that medieval was our specialty. And I like doing other things too, because I put all the medieval programs together, come up with an idea and get the music and, you know, transcribe it if need be, or find the best edition. And so moving on to um, American or contemporary meant maybe I didn't have to do that program. I could take a program.
Well, I know you did a variety of other things, and they're all interesting. But being a medievalist myself, I really love what you did with your colleagues, and I rather doubt that that your students at Queens College know quite what a privilege they have in working with you as as your students in courses there. And any parting words you have? What do you have to? What advice do you have for people beginning now and wanting a career in the making of music?
Yeah, I mean, I was even saying this back in 2010, 2008, when the crash happened and our concerts season went down. You have to make your own career. I mean, I teach at Queens College, which puts out a lot of orchestral musicians and chamber music, fantastic school. But a lot of the teachers are teaching as if those orchestras are still there, as if those orchestra jobs, I should say, are still there, but they're not. So early on, I think what I said about creating a niche and an identity, whether it's for yourself as a solo performer or for thinking of yourself as a project. What is your project? And this is something that might be you, or it might be you and some other people from time to time, or you and other people all the time. But a project with an identity and a level of integrity that is established early on. That niche finding, I think, whether the CD is a dodo bird as it is now, or whether some other technology comes up, whether touring is a big thing or not a thing, your niche identity that has certain standards, I think is the most important thing, to just start thinking about it. Don't panic, but what is,
Who
well,
are you, and what is it that you do?
yes. And if you can express that, it's almost like an elevator pitch,
Hmm.
like our elevator pitch, why we're different from every other group. It wasn't because we're women. It's because we do our music this certain way and make our concerts this certain way. And we happen to be four women. Okay, fine. But what is that? What do you do that other people don't do? And they'll be using TikTok or YouTube or other means to distribute themselves than we had, but it's the same process. It's the same goal and process to find that uniqueness of your project. The project is you. It's outside of you, but it is you. And that helped us. And we were not thinking, when they told us you should have a recording contract, we just stared, like they said, you should grow wings and fly away.
Well, an awful lot of people have been moved and impressed and inspired by your music, and I'm impressed by your career and what you have to say about it. I hope that what you have to say will influence and encourage a whole lot of people in the generation to come, in the same way that you've made a huge difference in the lives of a whole lot of people in the last several decades. So thank you so much for your wisdom and your art, Susan Hellauer, and thanks for having this conversation.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you.